Hello friends, and welcome to this tutorial video for all you budding drummers out there that have just received your first proper drum kit, or even just for those who are curious about how the drum kit works. Well, look no further, here we go. So, your drum kit has arrived, and it looks like this laid out. This bunch of metal and wood when set up can become a lifelong friend. This can look quite daunting when you see it, but please do not worry. You don't need a certificate in scaffolding, just a bit of patience, so settle back as we delve into this. Let's do it. So the easiest place to start is with the bass drum. Bass drum, or kick drum as it's sometimes known, comes in a range of sizes, but the most common size is 22 inches. And that means that this drum has a diameter of 22 inches across. This also tells you what size drum skin to fill it. The majority of modern drums today have two drum heads. One head that you strike with a drumstick and the other on the opposite side called a resonant head, which is usually thinner. The resonant head does exactly what it says, it resonates. Depending on how much tension you apply to the resonator head, you can add depth, attack and sustain to your bass drum sound. We will talk about tuning a little later on, but now let's get this set up. We place the bass drum in the centre of our setup, and we build everything else around it. On either side of the bass drum we have these legs. These are usually the same screw mechanism with teeth inside that help lock the feet in place at the angle you require. The most desirable angle I have found is about a 200-degree reflex angle. This angle helps the feet dig into the floor and helps stop the drum from moving. However, with vigorous playing, you need a little bit extra, so most kits have these rubber feet that contain spikes that work really well when dug into a carpet. On most legs like this one, we also have the option to extend the legs, which lifts the front of the bass drum off the floor. This helps bring any drum which is attached to the top of the bass drum, like tom-toms, towards your eventual drumming position. Now your bass drum might have a hole in the front resonator head. These are handy if you need access to put a cushion or a pillow inside if you want to shorten or make a sharper, less resonant sound. Or you can pick a head to dampen and leave the other one to resonate. The hole is also handy but not essential to place a microphone inside if you have a live gig or are doing a recording. These holes can be made if you get one of these gadgets, which give you the ability to cut a hole of your desired size. You can then add a reinforcement hoop to stop the hole from ripping or tearing. So now our bass drum is set up and we can now add the bass drum pedal. Now the pedals come in all shapes and sizes and prices, but essentially they are around the same design of a bass drum beater which hits the skin, a pedal which you press with your foot, and a spring which helps reset the pedal so it's ready for you to press again. The pedal attaches to the drum using this screw underneath which tightens onto the hoop to stop it moving away from the skin. On most hoops you have a protective pad which is to prevent the pedal scratching or denting the hoop. You really don't have to over tighten as most modern pedals have grips on the underside too. The spring on the side of the pedal is used to tension the recoil of the pedal. This is a point of personal preference as I know people that have it really tight and also people who have it really slack. Me, I'm on the slacker side. I personally think the optimum tension is the one that works naturally with your foot. So I would advise you to mess around to see what works for you with your foot technique in time. And the good thing about more modern pedals is that you can do this while it's in situ. Now your pedal is in place, you can set up the beater using this screw here. With this we can raise and lower where the bass drum beater hits the skin. Some people like to have it towards the outer of the drum. This gives a more resonant tonal quality. But the majority of folks place the beater so it hits directly the centre. This gives a sharp attack and is great for a consistent control sound if you play by resting the head on the drum skin. If you're wanting to get into playing very heavy music, I would suggest buying a small pad from your local drum centre that doubles the thickness of the area the bass drum beater strikes. This also changes the sound of the drum. Some can even add a click effect which is desired in some heavy music. Now the snare drum. This is the drum that sits between your legs and is mostly used in popular music for the backbeat on the 2 and 4. 1, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This drum can range in size and depth depending on what drum sound you're wanting. The most common size, like this one, is 14 inches diameter and 5 inches depth. Once again, you have a striking head and a resonant head. However, on your resonant head, we have these wires which touch the bottom head, which make them vibrate and rattle when the top head is struck. You can use this tensioner here to tighten or loosen the snare wires to get your desired sound. At the moment, in vogue is to have a slack, deep, short sounding tone, whereas in the 90s it was fashionable to have a higher, more resonant sound. Anyway, I suppose my point is the snare is the most versatile drum within your drum setup, and also the drum you will become most attached to, as it's the drum that you will practice on the most when warming up or practicing rudiments before those gigs. The drum is raised on the snare stand, which looks like this. Here we have the legs, the middle section, which is to help you raise and lower the drum, and this section here is to help with the angle or pitch of the snare drum. This corkscrew part here controls these arms which grip the sides of the snare drum, making it very secure. Quick note though, make sure you don't tighten these clasps over the snare ribbon or rope that hold the snare on, as it can snap them. There are many different types of drum heads or skins, from fibre skin, which recreates the sound of an old calf skin, to some with more than one ply and some even filled with oil to control overtones and deaden it slightly. Even though there are more drums to add, we're going to concentrate next on the hi-hat, which usually goes to the left for right-handed drummers and for the right for left-handed drummers. This is the one that confuses most beginners due to all its components and moving parts. So as you can see here, it's in bits, so we can start with the bottom section. Now please be careful, it's very easy to catch your fingers or skin when assembling or packing down. Make sure all nuts are sufficiently loose, and tap all 3 legs equally to extend, and then tighten and place on the floor. Make sure the pedal base of the hi-hat is slightly off the floor. This ensures all the legs are firmly on the ground, and if you need that extra support to stop the stand from moving, you can use the screw bites to dig into the carpet or drum mat. Now get the centre rod and screw it into this part of the bottom stand. This is the rod that will control the top hi-hat. Then over this rod we place the bottom support. This determines the height of the bottom cymbal. Most will have this metal disc and felt washer. They go on in this order: metal washer first and then felt washer next. Now you are free to get your preferred hi-hat height, whether you're Dave Grohl or Billy Cobham, each to their own. So here is a hi-hat clutch. This is the part you attach onto the top hi-hat. A good way to determine which one is the top hi-hat is to find the lighter of the 2 cymbals. We unscrew the holding screw and take off only one of the felt washers. Now place inside the hole and reattach the felt washer and holding screw. Be careful not to over tighten this part, as you need the top hi-hat cymbal to be able to move and sizzle nicely when in contact with the bottom hi-hat. Now for us to make sure that this setup so far is where we want everything to be, we have to bring out the seat or the throne and set that at a nice height. When starting out, it's always good to make sure that the angles of your leg look like this. This is a good place to start. Make sure your feet are comfortable on the bass drum and on the hi-hat pedal, and if not, move the snare drum and the hi-hat and get yourself comfortable. So we arrive onto the tom-toms. Now these things come in a plethora of sizes and shapes and are the sonic identity of the drum kit. Some drummers have loads and loads of toms and others have none, but the usual modern drum set has 3 toms. A high tom, which is most commonly 10 inches, a middle tom, which is 12 inches, and a floor tom, which is 14 inches, which is exactly the same size as a snare drum. So for example, John Bonham from Led Zeppelin used a 14-inch high tom and then 2 floor toms which were 16 and 18 inches, alongside a 24-inch bass drum. This made John Bonham's sound very big. So this is why tom-toms are very important, because that became his identity. So when you feel confident enough, you can experiment with different setups and see which one works for you. So these can attach in 3 ways. Some attach to a pole, which is attached to the bass drum. Some are floating, which means they attach to a cymbal stand or a frame via a clasp. And some just use another snare drum stand and set it higher. The position of the toms is very much in contention, so I'm going to show you my way, which is probably the most middle of the road way. This basically goes on the same train of thought as how the bass drum beater hits and the plane in which it lands. So we recreate this on the snare drum. We see here that our angle and position of strike is all wrong. The stick is digging into the snare, and if I continue to do this, I'll create dints in my new heads. So let's amend this. So there we have a comfortable snare drum position. I'm hitting the drum in the centre, and at an angle in which I hit the drum, it's a nice plane. I don't have to travel too far to do a rim hit. This is where you hit the skin and the rim at the same time for a harder accent or backbeat. So now let's put this logic towards the tom-tom. This is all about ergonomics. Firstly, I want to move my arm the least distance to the high tom. I also want a nice plane. I also want to hit consistently into the centre of the drum. I also want it high enough so I can do a rim shot on the toms too if I need. Then we move on to our middle tom and apply the same logic. You'll find if we move our body, not just our arms, that our natural position for the middle toms is here. And the same for the floor tom, and we're ready for our cymbals. And unfortunately folks, this is the bit where you lose all your money. Cymbals are expensive, and I hate to say it, but the majority of cheaper cymbals just don't cut it or sound as good. So with such a big investment, you're going to want to make sure these things last as long as possible. There are a few things that can help you do this in this video. But first, the stand. Quite straightforward operation, comes in two types, straight like this one or boom like this one, which just extends the position of the cymbal. I prefer to use all boom stands due to them being much more versatile. To finish your dream setup, you would ideally have 3 cymbals to hit. But if you just have 2, I wouldn't worry, that's a norm as well. The crash cymbals are exactly as they sound. They are for making accents and nuances within music to help emphasize different points within the song. They are also usually between 12 and 16 inches and all have a unique sound specific to whichever brand or size you have. On this setup, my crash cymbals go here, one just over the high tom and the other just over the floor tom, and then in the middle of the two goes my ride cymbal. This is so called due to this being a cymbal you can play repeated patterns on, basically ride on. A classic for a ride being a swing rhythm which sounds like this. But how do we fix them on? Let me show you. Here we have the stand end, and as you can see we have a felt washer. But in the middle of the felt we have this plastic collar. This helps prevent the cymbal from keyholing. This is where the cymbals rock back and forth on the screw thread and it wears away a hole which makes it look like a keyhole. Very, very bad for your cymbal and also affects the sound. So a plastic collar is a must. Make sure you replace them whenever they're worn. Then on the top we put another felt and then a holding nut, which if tightened fully over time with repeated hitting will help the cymbal to crack. So to avoid this, we tighten it to a fairly light pressure, giving the cymbal enough movement to absorb the strike throughout the whole cymbal. And when you get to old age like me, you just don't put them on at all. And finally, you can notice here that all the cymbals are another step up from our tom-tom position, so we can strike the toms easily and move on to our cymbals with a lean or a comfortable extension of our arms. How to tune your drums is a personal preference for the experienced drummer, but as this is for you guys and you're just starting out, I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to get a consistent sound from your drums. So do this on every drum. When putting on your head, finger tighten all drum lugs until you feel resistance, then take your drum key and tighten each lug one full turn, going across the drum in opposites. Then once you are back to the beginning, press your finger on the centre of the drum and check for creases and ripples in the drum head. If there are, go around again, but this time do a half turn, and then if needed again, a quarter turn. And when the creases have gone, you should have an overall consistent sound. If you still find your drums too boomy in sound, you can buy things like these. This is a brand called Moon Gel, and if you stick these removable things around your drums, they help deaden and control the sound. There are lots of methods and techniques available for tuning your drums, and gadgets like this one, which is called a drum dial, or even apps on your phone. What sticks to use? Again, a wide variety of drumsticks are available, but I would suggest going down the middle of the road and purchasing some Vic Firth 5A American Classics. I encourage my students to purchase these as a first time set. They come in either wood tip or nylon tip. These both affect the sound, mainly on the cymbals when played with the tip. The nylon gives you a more pinging sound than the wood. I personally would recommend wood tip to my students, as I feel it helps you read the stick better in your hands and gives you a more natural rebound. I would like to suggest that this is the most important part. How to sit is essential to not only how you move around the kit, but also how you prevent yourself from getting a bad back through continuous bad posture in the future. Basically, we would ideally sit so that when our foot is relaxed on the bass drum pedal and the hi-hat pedal, your thighs should be just more than 90 degrees. This means that when the foot is on the balls of your feet, your thighs are perfectly level. This video is brought to you by the Scott Johnson Foundation. And just by watching this video and the advertisements within it, you've helped immensely, because every penny from this video goes towards a lucky individual being introduced into the drumming world. Scott tragically lost his life in a fatal but avoidable accident in 2012. And since then, the foundation was set up in Scott's name to keep his legacy alive, and the drumming community has been brought closer by the donations of drums to be given to folks who wouldn't normally have the chance to learn. And so far to date, 10 years on, over 120 lucky folks have been given musical friends just like this one. If you would like to know more about Scott and links to the foundation, you'll find them in the description below. Thank you for watching, and best of luck with your new noisy friends.